Guys, I told you I'd make a Founders Test feedback video, and here we are, baby. Whether you're familiar with all things DEADROP or you're not, you've came to the right channel, as I'm about to recap our first look into the Founders Test. Now you may ask, what's the Founders Test, Joker? Well, it's our first look into the development build from Midnight Society. Now when I say development build, this is actually what Midnight Society is working on. So in the following footage, you're going to see a lot of incomplete guns, incomplete animations, incomplete maps. This is an in-development look at what Midnight Society is working on currently. In the last several months, it's been pretty quiet from Midnight Society outside of the drama that happened with Doc a few weeks ago, but outside of that, it's been really quiet. Well, here in the last several weeks, we've gotten an increase in communications in the Discord from the lead gameplay designer, Colin Fogel. From what I understand, he's taken the lead on this Founders testing, and man, I tell you, just from the first weekend, I had a blast. I'm addicted to jumping into all of these new features within DEADROP. So in order to make this as short as possible, let's go ahead and dive in. One of the main scope items of this playtest is Gunplay, and what a change we got. A full rebalance of weapon tuning and TTK was desperately needed from Snapshot 7, and Midnight Society definitely delivered. Every gun that I played with is viable in some way. I'm not a fan of shotguns in FPS games, but I found myself having a lot of fun with close quarters battles. Another thing that MS updated was the recoil systems of the weapons. Several guns from Snapshot 7 had little to no recoil and honestly felt lifeless, but now that the weapons are updated, they feel punchy and a little more polished. More updates to the weapons included updated hit markers and damage feedback. In Snapshot 7, we had numbers that gave you feedback on how much damage you were doing, but it seems like they've dropped that now, and now we have audio feedback as well as visual hit markers. To me, this helps the landed shots feel a little more satisfying and addicting, although I would like to see a toggle option for the damage numbers in future builds. This would be a huge help for testing weapons. The last thing that I'll touch on for weapons is weapon variations. In the Founders Test, we now have 3 different maker brands of weapons: Warforged, VCS, and V12. Each of these have different capabilities. Warforged will have the ability to be customized with attachments, VCS will have mod chips, and V12 weapons have armor destroying melee modes, which can be toggled by switching fire modes. Let me tell you, I had a lot of fun with the latter of the 3. Oh, V12. Ooh. What? Yeah.
I'm scared.
Oh, I'm loving it, baby. Let's go. There's definitely one weapon that I want to shout out, and it's the auto shotty. Everyone in the DEADROP community knows how bad and lifeless the auto shotty is in the current build. It's easily the worst weapon in the game, and it went from 0 to hero real quick. I'm loving this auto shotty. No! And then I lost it. It genuinely feels balanced now, and I really had a lot of fun with it over the weekend. I feel like shotguns are the hardest weapons in FPS games to balance, so kudos to Midnight Society for reworking that one. Overall, I'm really happy with the weapon changes, and I look forward to future variations as well as additional weapons. Now next up, I want to talk grenades. DEADROP currently has 2 ways of tossing grenades. One is overhand and the other is underhand. Since the introduction of them in the game, the underhand toss really wasn't a toss, it was more of a drop. And I've died many deaths from trying to toss one at someone's feet, but that someone ended up just being me. In the Founders Test, they've updated the underhand toss to almost what I would call a perfect distance. It's perfect for mid to close range fights without leaving you running for cover once you toss it. On the other hand, the overhand throw still needs a lot of work. If you hold right mouse button like you're ADSing, you're able to throw the grenades overhand, and right now, you yeet it to the moon. I'm sure this is something that Midnight Society is looking at, and I hope to see it changed in the future. Next up, I want to talk Muzzle Flash. There's a lot going on while in gunfights. Between the Muzzle Flash, smoke, damage feedback, and blood splatter, my overstimulated alarm is going insane inside my head. While the Muzzle Flash isn't extreme on every weapon, it's a lot on several of them. From what I heard from the community, this is a community-wide felt issue. The good news is the lead gameplay designer, Colin Fogel, has already implemented some changes to the Muzzle Flash. He posted a lengthy post in the Midnight Society Discord addressing issues that either MS was already tracking or that the founders have found and submitted. These changes to Muzzle Flash, as well as the others, have already been updated since last weekend. A playtest happened on Thursday, which I was unable to attend, but I'll be interested to see the Muzzle Flash changes on the next playtest I'm able to jump into. Big thanks to Colin and the rest of the team for keeping us in the loop and also addressing these issues so quickly. Next up, let's talk movement. Another huge change to look at in the Founders Test is movement. The movement received a massive overhaul, which was mostly in a positive direction. Certain weapons and armor reduce your movement now. For instance, while carrying an LMG or a sniper rifle, I felt more tanky, and I really like that change. In an extraction shooter, I think you should have some kind of grounded movement, and I felt like these changes were headed in that direction. Another great change was to sliding. Sliding gives you a nice little speed boost, which feels really good mid-combat. It's especially snappy going down slopes. If you hit a jump after sliding down a slope just right, you get like this boosted jump, and especially as a rat, it feels really satisfying to hit. Also, auto mantling was introduced, and this feels mostly positive, but there were occasions that I would mantle a ledge when I hit it from the side, and I wasn't meaning to, and I really didn't like that feeling. I believe Colin already confirmed somewhere in the Discord that they were looking into that. The last thing that I'll say about the movement is that ledge grabbing is gone mostly. You can still drop from a small distance and auto mantle a ledge, but it seems that in this current build, Midnight Society decided to move away from dropping from a high altitude and grabbing onto a ledge to either escape a fight or engage an unsuspecting player. To much of the community, ledge grabbing is one of the most unique mechanics that allows DEADROP to separate itself from other extraction shooters. It's extremely risky in most cases, and it'll definitely get your heart pumping. I know many in the community are hoping for the return of ledge grabbing, as well as I am. I think MS could go multiple different ways to bring it back. My suggestions are you could possibly give it to rats only, since they have accelerated movement when compared to claws, or you could provide a piece of equipment that enables a player to use it, like ledge hanging gloves. This would work like a zipline thruster that allows you to travel up ziplines. Other than that, movement is going in a very, very positive direction. Something I want to touch on really quickly is the audio. I'm sure there's a reason for the inconsistency of the audio, but different weapons had different levels of audio. For example, the shotguns were loud and punchy, but the assault rifles and SMG were really, really low. What it can do... This is a development build, and I'm not expecting perfect audio, but I think it's something to note. With that said, Colin has already addressed the audio spatialization and the distance handling in his post earlier this week. One of the other things about the audio is that the slide is just way too loud. It kind of sounds like ocean waves. Like, just close your eyes with me. Isn't that nice? Regardless, not a big deal right now, as this playtest doesn't relate to the audio. Now I want to talk about rats versus claws. I didn't go through every single game that we played on the weekend, but the majority of the games were won by claws. Claws have a slower mobility and slower health regen, but they also have light armor equipped. If the TTK is this unbalanced between them while the claws have light armor equipped, I can only imagine how much worse it'll be when the claws have heavy armor and a heavy helmet equipped. My suggestion for this is to increase the health of a rat to 150. I don't think they need armor, but they definitely need a health buff. If you're a great movement type of player, you'll be able to utilize the movement to your advantage and really hold your own. But if you're more of a grounded player that relies on gun skill and map knowledge, you're gonna have a hard time. The increase of health would help level the playing field for movement players as well as grounded players. Again, this is something that is already on Midnight Society's list per Colin's post earlier this week. They expected rats to be weaker in the TDM mode and acknowledges that some kind of change needs to be done. Colin also mentions that they'll give it a little bit before they make changes, and I agree with that. Let the community get accustomed to the changes first. The last thing that I'm going to touch on is controller and aim assist. I've played controller the majority of my gaming life, but about 3 years ago I switched to mouse and keyboard, and I've not used a controller since. With that said, I played a couple of games on controller this past weekend, and I gotta say, man, it's feeling really good. I don't know how it compared to previous snapshots, but I'm definitely interested in playing more. Aim assist felt really good up close and not too sticky. The struggle for me was long range, and I'm not so sure if that was a lack of aim assist or a lack of skill. I'm gonna assume it's the latter. Regardless, it's looking really good, and I'm looking forward to playing more games on controller. There's tons more to talk about, but I'm gonna cut it off there. I could easily make a video that's half an hour to 45 minutes long, talking about everything in detail, but those are the big things, the big changes, especially the gunplay and the movement. Those are the big things to highlight. If you want to learn more about the Founders Test, there's a huge blog on Midnight Society's website that you can go and read. Outside of that, you're stuck with watching content creators like myself, or you can go on OpenSea, spend a couple $100 on a Founders Pass, but to each their own. As a Midnight Society founder, I'm going to be pushing out a ton of content on these Founders Tests. You're going to be seeing streams, you're going to be seeing long form content, shorts, all the content possible I can push out. Obviously, Midnight Society is acting quick with the changes. It seems to be week by week they're going to be changing this thing. So it's going to be interesting, man, what this turns into over time. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. A like and a sub goes a long way. And hey, I'll see you on the next one.